All right. Well, let's get started. Let's jump right in. Okay. So with that all said, I do have an outline. It's not critical, but it might, sometimes I like to read, I'm a very visual learner, so I like to have a view of the outline. So Mark has been dropping the outline, the Google Doc, my notes into the chat. So you can grab those if you like. You don't need them. You can take your own notes. You can grab them later. Just so you know, okay? So we get started. All right, welcome. I'm so happy that you are here, and I'm honored to share this space with you. I actually first put on this class about a year ago in July 2022, when interest rates, I can now see retrospectively, were actually at their peak during a high inflation period, and stocks had done this big tumble at that time. And interestingly, as I was looking over the data today, everything corrected from that point. So actually, we're in a much better position now than we were a year ago when I first gave this talk. But there is a lot of talk in the air. You're probably seeing headlines online. You're probably seeing things about the Fed and interest rates, bank closings, things that feel kind of scary and make you wonder, like, should I be doing something? Do I need to worry? Newspapers, media, their business model is to get you to click on things, and they do that by triggering your emotions. So I want to really caution you to have good media savvy around that stuff. The fact is, you don't need to freak out. I'm just here to say you don't. There are things to know, things to be aware of, but the media tends to exaggerate a little bit the extremes, right, in order to get us to read the articles. And so I just want you to know that that lens is a little exaggerated. So I tend to think, like, let's all be a little more calm. So I am here hoping to kind of bring the temperature down on that stuff. Let's talk about what we're gonna cover today. First I'm going to introduce myself a little bit. Okay. This is my disclaimer. I am going to be talking about investing and some financial things. So I just wanted to be clear. This presentation is for education. This is not individual financial or tax advice. Just so, I just want to be clear on that. Okay. Most of you know me, I'm sure. I only really made this known through my Instagram and email. So you probably know me already, but this is me. I'm Hannah. I'm an artist, wife, small business owner, the owner of Sunlight Tax, podcast addict. That is true. This is really for the people who do not know me. These are my official stats. This is, I have a fancy degree or two, but I'm also an enrolled agent. So that is just to show you, I am actually a licensed tax professional. I am licensed by the IRS as a tax expert. So in case you just needed a little reassurance that that stuff was real, it is. These are organizations that have hired me to speak, to teach about taxes. I've spoken at over 300 organizations. I speak and teach taxes all the time. It's my favorite thing of what I do. I really teaching is what I love. But this is what I really love is the people. These are all actual clients, people who've been part of my program, who I've been able to help with that work. And so to me, this is the real honor of what I do. It's the people that I get to serve. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to cover today. Like I said, I'm going to be respectful of your time and keep it just to 1 hour, so nice and short, kind of bite-sized. I've broken the talk basically into 3 category areas. I want to give you an overview, sort of like, hey, what's the pulse on the economy right now? What is going on? And what does that mean? What does it mean for me, right? The small, creative or caring business owner. Number 2, personal finance basics to know, okay? This is going to be very gentle intro level stuff. This is just kind of the basic level, but I don't want to take for granted that you know that. I didn't know it walking into my life as an artist, and reminding yourself that the basics do not change, I find to be very reassuring, because you have markets, which change all the time, right? They're constantly in flux. But the basics of a solid personal finance strategy do not change. They actually already account for the fact that there will be highs and there will be lows. So once you have the knowledge of basic personal finance, you can enter that, today's news stuff into that framework, and it will all kind of fit and help you make informed decisions, right? So you do not need to change what you know all the time. Personal finance basics, investing basics, these stay steady. And I actually find that deeply, deeply reassuring, right? You do not need to change your strategy when there's a downturn. Your strategy should already be accounting for the fact that there are downturns, right? Because downturns are simply a part of the market cycle. They're actually completely normal. They're actually even healthy. We call them, economists sometimes call downturns corrections, which is a bit of a euphemistic way of saying, prices drop, things recalibrate, things that were overpriced tend to come down in price. These are actually good for consumers as well. Of course, if you're acutely feeling pain, it doesn't feel good. And I understand there's real consequences. But these market corrections, recessions actually do an important job in the economy of kind of calibrating, are things costing what they really should? And sometimes things that are overpriced come down in price to kind of recalibrate. So it really is not all bad. And that's going to be a major part of my message today. Now, part number 3 is actually like the opportunity zone. So I really also want to point out some concrete ways where a recession can be extremely helpful for your business, okay? There are actually some things you can do, ways that recessions give you opportunity in making your business stand out, okay? And to get a little more specific, I'm going to be covering emergency savings, inflation, adjusting your quarterly tax payments, investing, how not to panic. Recessions, as odd as it seems, are actually a really wonderful time to start investing for the first time. If you never have, stocks are on sale in a recession. It's actually a really kind of amazing thing. We're going to talk about why feelings matter. This is a very Hannah take on this, but I think it's the truth. And then again, I'm going to talk about opportunities for you. All right. So let's jump in. I'm going to kind of talk about the lay of the land. Let's get a sense of the economic picture. And I have a bunch of charts of stock exchanges here. That one, what was that? That was the Dow Jones. This is the New York Stock Exchange. That's the S&P 500. This was one I happen to like to follow the most, but they're all interesting. You're going to see a trend. They all go up, right? That's not a promise for the future, but you can see that over a long time horizon, the stock market has a trend, right? Okay, so I'm just going to leave the screen there as I talk about kind of what's going on right now in the economy, okay? So first of all, are we even in a recession, right? It's kind of an interesting question. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't, okay? Technically, a recession, there's two things technically that make a recession, okay? One is a fall, the sort of like what the media tends to use as a baseline for recession is a fall in GDP for 2 consecutive quarters, okay? That's typically how we define a recession. Note that that's retroactive. Note that those 2 quarters have gone by already. So we're talking about 6 months is the earliest that anybody's going to name it a recession, and you've already been suffering for 6 months, right? So I want you to really understand that that lag time means we don't care what the label is. Retroactively, we may find out that what we're in is a recession even before the label gets put on it. So here's where you got to be careful with the labels, okay? Very technically, a recession in the US is actually officially declared by a committee of 8 economists at the National Bureau of Economic Research. This can take up to a year, right? So again, it isn't declared until retroactively. And just to put a fine point on it, if you in your business, right, say you're an online course creator like me, or you are selling, fine, super high end pottery that goes, as collector items that goes in people's homes, right? If your sales are falling off, if you're starting to see your, consumer, the behavior of your clients shift and change and them have more hesitancy about signing on with you, are you going to sit there and wait for a year to go by for those 8 economists to make a decision about whether we're going to put this name recession on it or not? No, of course not, right? Of course not. You want to be responding in your business in real time as soon as you possibly can, right? So it may be, you may be all the way through the hard part in your business before any economist ever comes back and labels this period a recession. I'm just trying to make the point that the name is a little bit irrelevant to you. So the idea, let's just think of it as like when your clients start not buying the way that they did a year ago, when their behavior is changing, how do you react, right? That's really what you care about, right? Okay. A recession is somewhat likely in our future, but what's very interesting is that there have been different factors kind of going up and down, and we have not technically been in a recession for the last year, even though, like I said, I actually first gave this presentation a year ago at the peak of our inflation when it was 9.1% inflation. And the stocks had just done this little mini crash. We still technically haven't been, it's not technically been called a recession yet. And actually things are starting to look better. So when I was looking over the numbers this morning, the numbers now are actually much better than they were a year ago. So it's kind of interesting. We might pull out without one. But like I said, does it matter to you? It's kind of, the name actually sort of doesn't matter. Okay. Now, here are the concerns, and let's lay out the actual economics here, okay? So first of all, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, it's up 4.9% from a year ago. Now, this time last year, it was up 9.1% from a year before that. So this is interesting because what this means is, yes, prices are going up, but the rate that they're going up has been falling. That sounds a little hard to get your head around maybe, but it means that inflation is getting under control, okay? It's a little higher than the Fed would like. The Fed has a target rate of inflation of 2%, but the measures they've taken over the last year to bring it down from its peak of 9.1% have been working. So we really like to shitpost the US government, but I am here to say the Fed is doing an amazing job. Like, I am so happy for the technocrats doing their work on our behalf. So a couple details just to dig in. The Consumer Price Index, basically, it's an indexing system. There's housing prices are the largest factor. There's other factors like groceries and gas, and car buying. They tend to track the items that consumers buy the most and how quickly the rates of those prices are going up, okay? Interest rates have been going up, and that is deliberate. So interest rates are controlled by the Fed. The Fed is basically a part of our government. Jerome Powell is our Fed chairman at the moment. Honestly, I am so happy with him. I think he's been doing an amazing job, truly, truly. And he has, of course, a massive team. The Fed has been increasing interest rates. So that's the cost to borrow money, right? That's what an interest rate is in this country. It's set by the federal government, at the base rate, and then banks will layer a little profit on top of that. So the Fed rate is always going to be lower than what your bank is going to give you. But interest rates are set by the Fed, and the tool that the Fed has is a fairly blunt instrument. Basically, they can raise interest rates, aka raise the cost of borrowing, in order to slow down the economy, right? And we want to slow down the economy, even though it has a risk of recession. We want to slow down the economy when inflation is high because we're trying to reduce inflation. Inflation is when the cost of goods keeps getting higher and more expensive, when your dollar tomorrow doesn't go as far as your dollar today, right? So the Fed is in a sort of tricky position. And you know what? Having been watching this pretty closely for a year, again, I'm so happy with the job they've been doing. It's amazing. But they've been slowly raising interest rates over the past year to bring inflation down, and they have gotten it to a low, a 2-year low. So inflation right now is below 5%, and that is impressive. The needle that the Fed is trying to thread is they don't want to raise interest rates super fast. They're doing it quarter point at a time, sometimes a half a point. If they do it too fast and prices, interest rates go up too fast, there's a risk of causing a recession, right? So anytime they're playing with this, the recession is kind of a risk. And that's why you're hearing for the last year all this talk of recession over and over. It's basically on people's minds because every single quarter the Fed has been slowly ratcheting up interest rates. Okay, so that's why you're hearing about it so much. Is this making sense to everybody? I know this is a very sort of gentle, gentle intro. So the hope basically is that the Fed will be raising interest rates just to the perfect level, right? We want Goldilocks. We want not too hard, not too soft, right? We want it right in the middle, in the sweet spot. And the hope is we can bring down inflation rates by raising interest rates without causing a recession. And this is what you might have heard in the news called a soft landing. We're trying to bring those interest rates down without a crash, right? That's the whole point. That's what we mean when we say soft landing. All right. So a couple more status things, and then we're going to move on. Stock prices are up from a year ago. When I gave this talk in July last year, the stock market had just been tumbling for a couple days, weeks, and I was feeling a little scary. I looked back at a 1-year history of the various stock indices this year, and stocks are up from this time last year. So even accounting for that crash. So pretty interesting. I will tell you this, that there is this whole debt limit standoff in Congress, whether the issue of whether Congress, I try not to be partisan in anything I say, but there's only one party holding the economy hostage right now. And I think it's just you should call a spade a spade. The Republicans are basically trying to get a whole bunch of things that they can't pass through, voters and actual good policy. And they're trying to get it by bribing the rest of us and saying, we're going to crash the whole economy if you don't, get rid of those tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act. Anyway, so I've been watching the debt limit debate a little bit just because the stock markets so far have not reacted to that. They're actually being very even keeled, which is a little unusual for the stock market, to be honest. But, June 1st is when Janet Yellen said that we might run out of money as a country. So if we don't get resolution or debt limit raised by that time, then, the stock market could react. So I do want to actually kind of put it on your radar to just like this moment in particular, although I would not generally advise ever sort of trying to time the market. I'm not making any major stock purchases until we get resolution on that debt limit crisis. I am not putting in a big chunk of money to the stock market right now. I'm going to wait for a month. So I'm just going to say that. Okay. Let's see what else I want to make sure I cover with you. So inflation has come down to a 2-year low. It's below 5% right now. Okay. What does inflation mean? Inflation means that your dollar is getting weaker. The buying power of a dollar today is less than it was yesterday. That's what inflation does. Effectively, it takes you more money to buy the same things. So if you're trying to buy a house right now, or if you're trying to get started renting right now or buying a car, inflation will hurt you more. right? If you're in a lease in your apartment, you're probably fine, right? You're not going to see a big change. It's people who happen to be transitioning right now who can get kind of hit, especially hard by the economy. Also, if you've been in a mortgage that you've had for a while, you probably have a historically low interest rate on that mortgage. And so you're probably not especially affected by the high interest rates right now. You will see that this is having some effects in the housing market, which I've been doing quite a bit of research on. Stay tuned for that. But it's having some effects in the housing market because a lot of people are holding on to their houses. People are not wanting to put their house on the market right now because they have a good mortgage with a good interest rate now, and they don't want to go out and trade their 3% interest rate mortgage for a 7% mortgage right now. Okay, so you're going to see housing inventory come down. So ironically, housing prices are not coming down the way you might expect they would. Inflation is actually making people not put things on the market. Okay. In the outline that I've shared, and Mark can drop the link to my outline for this talk, I actually have a little link to an inflation calculator that the New York Times put out a year ago, which actually shows interest rates do not affect everybody equally. Like I just was painting some scenarios of where it might affect you more versus less. I have this personal inflation calculator from the New York Times that I'm linking to in this outline. And so you can go on that and you can kind of look at your own situation and see sort of where you get hit, whether you're kind of on the more affected or less affected side of inflation right now. Okay, but if your money is just sitting in a cash, savings account right now, the point is when there's inflation that the money is losing value because inflation is eating away at it. Okay, that is one of the effects of inflation. So a key takeaway here is that in order to counteract inflation, in order for your money to be growing, it needs to be invested. Okay. There's some really good news. There's never been a better time to invest. It's actually a really great time to invest right now because when stocks have been correcting and stock prices have been coming down, stocks are on sale, basically. So, all right. Here are some things in the economy right now that are good. Jobless claims are down, right? Lots of employment. Employment is great right now. Pay is going up. That's also pretty cool. Stock prices are actually up from a year ago. So we haven't had a recent crash. I think the market is kind of on pins and needles watching the debt ceiling thing, but what can we do? So the reality about recession is we just don't know. We don't actually know if we're in one right now. And if we may learn months and months down the road that we have been in one. It's a retroactive label. But it's really less relevant whether we get that label or not than how your life is actually affected today. Okay, and that's what we're going to start focusing on. Okay, so is the economy tanking right now? No. Do you need to panic? No. Should you sell everything? Should you sell all your investments? No. Should you cut all your spending? Probably not. Okay, so do by all means, and it's always a good thing to do go through your bank statements, your credit card statements, and do cut out stuff that, it feels meaningless or unimportant to you or doesn't give you a lot of value. That's fine. That's fine. But I would not recommend necessarily cutting spending on things that give you a return on your investment, right? So advertising in your business is one of those areas. Marketing in your business is one of those areas. Investing in yourself, whether it's your education, your skill level, that is something I would not cut right now. Okay, so there's things you want to be judicious about what you do and don't cut right now. Okay, let's move on to personal finance basics. All right, so again, the reassuring thing I want you to know here is that personal finance basics, unlike the markets, which change every day and are extremely dynamic and have lots of moving parts, I hope I summarized the current market snapshot well for you, but please note that it's relevant absolutely as of May 18th, 2023. And if you are watching this video in the future, the further we get away from that date, the more that particular market snapshot is going to become less relevant, right? But as we talk about personal finance basics, they stay the same. This will be the same whenever I give this talk, right? And it could be 3 years from now about what do you do during boom times, right? The personal finance section of this talk is going to stay the same. Okay, so what are these personal finance basics? So first, I want to talk about emergency savings, right? Your cushion, your sort of safety cushion, okay? If you are a W-2 worker, an employee, right? You have a sort of steady job that feels like in good shape. The conventional wisdom says that your safety cushion, your emergency savings should be 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Now, very important to know, this talk is really for self-employed people. If you're watching right now, you probably work for yourself. And I think your personal savings, your emergency fund should be more robust than that when you work for yourself, because you don't have as much safety net built in from a W-2 job or from benefits, right? Or from getting unemployment afterwards, right? So for us, when you're self-employed, my recommendation for that emergency savings is more, I would say more like 6 months to a year of expenses is what you actually want. This is a fund that basically prevents you from taking on bad, low-paid work because you, out of just desperation. It helps you be more choosy. It helps you avoid like a disaster if you lose your apartment or something. So it's very important. And this is the real fundamental first step in your personal finances. Okay. So before you ever invest, you need to have a safety net built up, this emergency savings fund. Okay. So if you're starting from zero right now, build up a personal savings fund, an emergency fund, super important. Okay. Next order of operations. After you have a savings, emergency savings built up, your next step is to pay down high interest debt. Now, not all debt is the same. The actual interest rate you have makes a big difference about how quickly you want to be paying it off. The higher the interest rate, the more quickly you want to pay that off. In a perfect world, you don't ever do spending on things you can't pay for in cash, right? You should not, a new couch, beautiful clothing. These are not things that should actually go on a credit card. I know that capitalism is here to tell you to spend, spend, spend all the time. There's a lot of pressure to spend money in a capitalist culture. But in general, that's a good principle. Like if you can't afford the dinner, the couch, the gorgeous purse, you should not put it on a credit card. Those things should be only things you can afford in cash at the moment. That's just a good principle. Things like education, a mortgage, things that kind of have a future benefit for you, those you can incur some debt for. That is more okay. Okay. So credit card interest rates can go up. And in general, you want to minimize your exposure to that as much as possible by just making sure that you pay off any credit card debt. It's why we generally say be careful about credit card debt. Okay, let's talk about adjusting your quarterly tax payments, okay? So when you are self-employed, and here's a tax component of this talk. When you're self-employed, you need to be paying your taxes quarterly, right? If your income is coming in and there's no withholding, right? And it's all subject to self-employment tax, as it is when you're a sole proprietor, right? You must be paying your taxes quarterly. This is actually mandatory. It's not optional. A lot of people think it's optional and they think, oh, I'll just save it in a savings account and I'll pay it one time on the tax deadline. But when you do that, you're incurring daily interest and 4 penalties a year. So I encourage you to actually make the payments to the US Treasury each quarter so you don't pay penalties and interest all the time. A lot of accountants don't really take their clients aside and explain this to them. And so people don't even know how much money they're spending to not be paying quarterly. Okay, so assuming you are making quarterly tax payments, as you need to be, what happens? So your estimated quarterly tax payments in general, the rate that you will pay them is based on last year's taxes. This system works absolutely fine when your income stays the same each year, right? So the rule goes, if I pay 100% of the tax I owed last year, broken up into quarters, each quarter this year. So in other words, over the course of this year, I'll pay 100% of the tax that I owed last year. That doesn't mean I'll have paid exactly the right amount of tax. I'll still have to settle up by April 15th to pay any extra I might still owe or get a refund for whatever I overpaid. But that is called a safe harbor, right? If you pay 100% of last year's tax, you are meeting the safe harbor rule and you will not be assessed penalties or interest, okay? That's the baseline. That is the kind of estimate your accountant will include when you pay for a tax return. So that is the one most people have going, if they have anything going at all, okay? So just wanted you to know where your baseline is set to. And also just FYI, if your income is over $150,000 and you're single, that percentage actually bumps up past 100% to 110% of last year's tax, okay? So that's the baseline for quarterly taxes. However, what happened? That system works great when your income stays steady, but what happens when your income is not steady? Now, recessions, the reason I bring this up now is recessions can make your income drop, right? So what happens if your income last year was $100,000, but suddenly this year it's looking more like it's going to be $70,000, right? You don't want to have to pay 100% of last year's tax. You are not going to owe all of that money. In the end, you will get a refund. And the IRS doesn't actually want you to have to pay cash out the door that you need to meet your living expenses right now. And so we have a second safe harbor rule in taxes that will help you pay something that is more accurate to what you actually owe for the year. In other words, be able to keep more of your current cash in your account so you can afford the life you are living in a situation where you have less money. This is very important, right? To survive your way through a tightening of your income, okay? So adjusting your tax payments, knowing how to do that is very important. I will tell you what the safe harbor rule is, safe harbor rule number 2, that helps you do this. And I will help you I will teach you how we calculate it. So the second safe harbor rule says you can pay every quarter 90% of this year's tax, okay? 90% of this year's tax every quarter over the course of this year. And then that will, if you meet that threshold, you will also not incur penalties or interest, okay? So recessions are the time for rule number 2. The 90% rule. And again, that bumps up to 100% if your income is over $150,000. So what you actually need when we're in a recession, when you need to make adjustments of your quarterly tax payment, when you know you need to be paying a lower amount because you're going to make less income this year, you need to understand, and the better you understand these quarterly tax rules, the more power you have over cash you get to keep. It helps you make adjustments so you can keep more of that cash. So essentially, the way to do this is you're going to do your bookkeeping for the quarter in real time. So it means you have to do bookkeeping, right, in order to take advantage of this. So I'm going to take, when I say my bookkeeping, I say you're going to track all the income you make between January 1st and March 31st. You're going to have to add all that together. You track all the expenses between January 1st and March 31st, and you subtract the expenses from the income so you know what your profit is. When you know what your profit is, that is basically a rough estimate of what your taxable income is, okay? All of that income is subject to self-employment tax, which is 15.3%. So you know that you're going to multiply your profit times 15.3% to determine your self-employment tax due for that quarter. Then you also need to layer on your income tax due on that amount. So that might be anywhere between 0 and 37%. Most likely it's between 10 and 20%. So I tend to pick a little bit of a low estimate, maybe 15%, 20%, but it takes a little practice to get that number right. Because it's a number we can't know until you file your next tax return. It's a number you won't know until the future, which is why we call it estimated quarterly taxes and not perfect quarterly taxes. So I like to just pick a number and calculate your income tax due on the profit for the quarter and add that to my self-employment tax due for the quarter. Okay. I'm going kind of rough and quick over how to do this, but that is how to do it. And essentially the trick is you do it in real time. You do it for this quarter based on this quarter's actual profit. Then you do it next quarter for next quarter's actual profit. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. You have 4 tries to hone in on the correct number for the quarter. That is how you maintain control over paying in your quarterly taxes so that you don't get assessed penalties and interest, but also not paying a radically too high number in a year when your income has dropped. Okay. If you're freaking out about this, I just want you to know that my program, Money Bootcamp, is essentially designed to help you do this. Okay. So I will give some resources about how to join that program at the end if you want them, but I'm just telling you that, of course, I understand you may want some support with this. And that is why, I focus so heavily on teaching it inside of my program, Money Bootcamp. Okay. But in a nutshell, there you go. That's how you do it. You have just learned it. Okay, so just to put some numbers on that, and then we'll move along. I have, if you want to go through this outline, I've written out the math for a couple different scenarios so that you can actually look at this outline that I'm sharing here. Mark, you can drop that in the chat again if anybody missed this outline when we started. But I go through a couple different scenarios about calculating that. Okay, all right, so next in personal finances is investing. Investing is very important because investing is how you grow your wealth. It's how you grow your long-term financial security. And investing is the only way to beat inflation. Investing means your money is growing. And if your money isn't growing and inflation is making its value shrink, then your money is shrinking. Right? So investing becomes triple important in an inflationary period. It's frankly always important, but in an inflationary period, it's especially important. I'm going to give you a couple baseline things to remember about investing. And again, in my program, yes, I teach very comprehensively about investing strategies and like the basics that you need to know, but I will give you the short version right now. 1, investing is long-term. Super important. You have to know that. Do not try to put money in the stock market and pull it out in a week, a year, 2 years, right? It's not for the short term. You have to remember that. I don't really advise that you invest money that you want to use even in the next 5 years. That's pretty conservative, but I like to be very conservative when I am talking about and teaching investing. Do not start investing in stocks and bonds until you've built up that emergency fund. So I already mentioned this, but I'm going to reiterate it. Your emergency fund is especially important in a recession. It's always important, but especially so in a recession. And so do not start investing when you don't yet have that emergency fund, okay? And also paying down high interest credit, high interest loans is also important because if you're paying 20% interest on a credit card balance and you invest money in the stock market, which gets you a historic rate of return of 8%, which is great, 8% is not going to beat the 20% that debt is costing you, right? Interest goes in both directions. It pulls your money down when it's debt and it pulls it up when it's investment, okay? So this is why paying off credit card loans and paying off debt is a very key, important step in your personal finance journey, and it comes first, comes before investing. So just remember that personal finance has an order of operations, okay? So you don't want to skip ahead. I like to say, aim to keep your money in the stock market for 10 years. If you're going to invest, try for a minimum horizon of 10 years. 5 years might be okay, but the shorter the time horizon, the higher the risk. So me, I hate risk. I want my time horizon as long as I can get it. Even better, of course, is over the course of your whole lifetime. Set it and forget it. Okay, so let's talk about investing, how not to panic, hidden opportunities, okay? All right, so why do you need to invest? Money in cash and savings only is losing value, most especially when there's inflation, okay? Only invested money is growing. It can feel really hard to invest, especially if you were socialized female or maybe LGBTQ plus, because people tend to talk to female socialized children. And there's studies that really demonstrate this. They use words like be careful, save, conserve, whereas we say the opposite to people socialized as boys, right? We say, grow your wealth, take risks, right? So you probably got some patriarchal meta messages when you were a kid that can actually inform your feelings about investing. This is why I'm so passionate about teaching people socialized as women, queer folks, historically marginalized folks about investing, because I really like to bring front and center why you might feel like this is weird or not for you, okay? And I'm just saying, I'm here on the other side of this as a person who managed to get it started and see the benefits and be like, oh my gosh, it's great over here on this side of the mountain. Come on over, right? Okay. Okay. So investment does involve some level of risk. You have to know that. And it's important to actually identify what those risks are, because without doing that, you don't know and you're more subject to them. Okay. So you need some basic level of education. Again, I'm not trying to be self-promotional here, but it is my mission to get people to step into this world who feel discomfort with it. And so this is one of the major components of my program, Money Bootcamp. I teach investing. Great news though, it's not rocket science. Good investing is simple and it does not change. Just like personal finance basics, investing basics do not change. You do not change your investment strategy when the stock market tanks. You do not change your investment strategy when the stock market is booming. A good investment strategy already accounts for peaks and lows, okay? Set it and forget it is the best plan. Okay. Downturns are normal. Recessions are normal, right? Recessions are just kind of what happens every 8 years-ish. Also, just to give you a little reassurance, if you are, if you were a socialized female and you do feel, or if you come from a historically marginalized group and maybe were given other messages about why this world is not for people like you, I just want to say there's data that says that women specifically get better results from their investments than men. Interesting, right? And I link to that source report here in this outline. So you can see that report for your own eyes, with your own eyes, okay? But interestingly also, women tend to feel less confident about investing. That's kind of a bummer. The reason that women make great investors is we trade less. And so we ride out the lows, we incur fewer fees, and we have fewer taxable transactions. Actually, not being an active investor, setting it and forgetting it is wise. It's actually a really good thing. And it gets you better returns. Also, women tend to be more consistent. Again, this is based on data. I'm not trying to just generalize here. Okay. And just to let you know, in my program in Money Bootcamp, and many of you here watching are in Money Bootcamp, I teach a 1-hour investment training, and we talk about how to get started, how to find out what your investment costs are, what your fees are, how to vet your advisors, how to analyze your advisor fees, because they are very hidden sometimes. And also cheaper and better alternatives to advisors. You don't need an advisor. How not to get, fleeced by your advisors, though, I think is an important part of learning how to invest. How to keep the taxes low. If you're not accounting for taxes in your investments, your picture is incomplete. So the tax part is important. And also, I think the most important thing is just how to get started simply, because what I see is that overwhelm is the thing in people's way. A feeling of like, oh, I'm going to read just one more article, one more book, one more thing, right? At a certain point, you actually do have to take the action, right? It's not about endless input. Okay. All right. And I just want to remind you that a sound, non-trendy strategy does not change and accounts for highs and lows in the market. Okay. The thing that's interesting to know is when stock prices fall, you can think of it like a sale. It's like stocks go on sale, right? Recessions are actually one of the sort of golden things about a recession is that it's a sale on stocks. So let me show you. So these are some historic trends. This is the Dow Jones Industrial Average for over 100 years. As you can see, there are big drops in the market, but even when you take the long view, if your investing is long-term, you can see that the trend is still up. Now listen, past results do not guarantee the future, right? This doesn't mean we know the future, right? You have to understand that. But I look at this historic data and it's, to me, very encouraging. So let me find my notes here, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, in my econ classes, we tended to use 8% interest as the average rate of return on stock investments. This is a generally accepted and agreed on number. Looking at graphs for this presentation, I see rates actually be higher than that. When you look at these guys, the rates are more like 10.5%. So 8% feels nice and conservative to me. There are people who will argue. But the thing is, most people, when you think of what you're supposed to do when you invest, think of what the phrase is. Buy low, sell high, right? Have you heard that before? Okay, but most people buy high and sell low. Now, why is it that most people do the opposite of what they know they're supposed to do? Anybody have a guess? Feelings. This is definitely my take on it, but this is what I see. People have feelings. This is the reason. So seeing your investments lose money, when you're in a downturn, it sucks. It's scary. You look at the sort of value of your portfolio dropping and you're like, it puts a pit in your stomach and you're like, oh my God, I have to stop this horrible feeling of loss, right? Most people do the opposite of what they're supposed to do. Doing the right thing is really hard because feelings get in the way. Human psychology makes us want to cut our losses and sell. This is actually the worst thing you can do if your stocks start going down. When you sell, you guarantee the loss. You do what's called realizing the loss in tax terminology. You make it actual. Whereas if you don't sell, the likelihood, and I showed those graphs here just to reassure you that this is like historic data is just very, very clear, right? This gives me a ton of confidence that the prices will most likely recover, okay? But you have to not sell when the prices go down. Don't sell low. It is hard to get excited about buying stock when prices are dropping. I totally understand. So I have a couple tips for you about how to mitigate the feelings, okay? 1, remember the long term. The long term is why you invest. You're not investing for this year, next year, the year after that. Long term. Think of it as a sale. I don't know about you, but I love a sale. And when you buy stock after it's had a bit of a dip or a crash, you're getting stocks on sale. So I also like to look at really wise long-term investors. Warren Buffett is like, I mean, everybody idolizes him, but for good reason. I really look to him. He's a very wise investor, not trendy. And I always like to look at what he's doing. Whenever the economy tanks, Warren Buffett is buying. That's the time to buy. When everybody else is scared, I think Warren Buffett even has this quote, when everybody is scared, I buy. When everybody's buying, I'm scared, right? That's actually really wise. Okay. Oh, I didn't cover these other things. Okay, I have a whole other part to get to. Okay, so here's the opportunity part. Let's talk about your opportunities in a recession. And these are things you can do, not just about investing, but actually in your business to shore it up, strengthen it, and take advantage if we have a moment where everybody else is freaking out. Okay, I'm here to say, don't freak out. Stay steady, manage your feelings, get your exercise, hug your children. Don't freak out. Okay, so 3 opportunities hiding in a recession. Number 1, investing is your number 1 opportunity. It is a chance to buy stocks on sale. Okay. You please do your due diligence, take my course, read a Susie Orman book, however you want to educate yourself, do the research, know the risks, but it's a great time to invest. It is a potential you have huge potential to maximize the gains for your long-term investments during a recession. Opportunity number 2, ad costs. Ad costs drop during a recession. So that is a chance for you to get in front of even more potential clients. Your competitors very likely at this time are pulling back their spending on marketing and advertising. Your ad dollars go further in a recession. When costs drop, your marketing dollars go further and you have less competition, okay? So it's a really good time to advertise if you pay for advertising. I also want you to know opportunity number 3, stronger businesses tend to pull ahead in recessions and weaker businesses tend to pull away. This is why I spent so much time in this talk on personal finance basics, because personal finance basics on your personal side, but also in your business, good basic financial practices keep you strong, right? It's the people who do not have those things in place who tend to quit, who tend to need to drop out, take a day job, stop their business, etc. Right? So I just cannot emphasize to you enough, if you have that emergency savings fund, if you are paying down your debt, if you are investing, your position is strong and getting stronger. Okay. This is always going to serve you. It will continue to serve you when the economy is good again, but it will help accelerate you during a recession when your peers are dropping away. Okay. So, small creative businesses like yours get distracted and lose their nerve when everybody's like buyer hesitancy is up. And it's a real chance for you as a small business owner to hone your message, to focus on your clients' needs, invest in some new skills, and become a real go-to person inside your niche. And look, let's get meta here for a second. Here's me doing exactly that right at this moment, right? It's a time when in the media is all this talk about recession. So what do? Instead of going radio silent on all my clients, I'm like, hey, come to this free class and we'll talk about recessions, because I want to be top of mind to people like you. Like, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here to serve you. What do you need? You're worrying about this? Let me teach you some stuff that will help you about this. You take this, take me as an example, and you can use this in your business. How can you be serving your clients better at a time where they're getting nervous? Okay. There's no better time to get to know your clients better, to reassure them that you're there and to be listening. So serving your clients and your audience is really awesome. What do they need right now? Talk about it, address it, be frank about it, right? You may need to pivot your offerings somewhat to fit into people's current concerns, right? So be open to that. This does not mean you need to give discounts, okay? Just for the record, it doesn't mean that. But maybe what you can do is break up a larger offering that's more expensive into smaller chunks and sell it in parts. You can do that. So there's different strategies that you can use to make your offerings a little more appealing, even without discounting. Okay. And I also want to teach you something that comes from my own business coach, Lisa Zahia, who is wonderful. She has some spending I am not cutting during a recession because I always find it valuable to have a business coach. But something that she taught me is that there are some things that actually sell better during a recession. Are you curious what those things are? Lipstick, movies, and education do really, really well during recessions. Think about that. Treats, little treats do really well in a recession, right? Maybe you didn't go on that vacation, but damn, you're going to buy that awesome lipstick. You're like trading big things for little things sometimes. Escapism, movies are like escapism. So how do you help people kind of get their mind off it, right? And self-care and investment, right? So education tends to do really well. People will tend to retool their skills during recession. So education, courses, these do well in a recession. So you want to make sure to base your changes on data, not feelings. Just remember how much feelings can get you going the wrong direction. So take surveys, get data, okay? Communicate with your clients, be direct with them, and now is the time to be indispensable, okay? If you're worried about not being hired by your client, think through why you are indispensable at this moment and communicate that, okay? Silence is going to guarantee some bad results, but being direct with your clients about their current needs, there's never going to serve you badly, right? It's always going to be good. And then don't forget that cash reserves in your business are more important now than ever, okay? So in a recession, it becomes especially important. People without cash reserves can do okay when the economy is booming and every client says yes. When clients start saying no and that money starts slowing down, coming in the door, your cash reserves are what keep your doors open, okay? So don't skip that part. All right, I'm going to give you a little, oh shoot, I'm over time. I promised an hour and I went over. Okay, I want to give you a little personal story about kind of what I am doing right now in this recession. And then I just want to give you, actually, Mark, if you want to drop, because I know some people are going to need to go right at 1, will you drop the link? So I am going to talk a little bit about my program, Money Bootcamp, not much, but just if this makes you feel like, okay, maybe it is time for me to learn about investing. Maybe I do need some of this like personal finance training. Maybe I do need some of that help with lowering my quarterly tax payments. Basically, that is what my program, Money Bootcamp, is designed for. I'll talk about this. And then after I've talked a little bit about Money Bootcamp for you, I'm going to just tell you personally what I am doing behind the scenes in my own investments right now, okay, during the recession. Okay, so Mark, can you just drop the link in to register? So I just want to let you know, okay, these are the things we've covered. If you need to go, I fully understand. So this is what we've covered today. My program, Money Bootcamp, so just what it is it's video courses that follow a framework of getting yourself organized, bookkeeping, and paying your quarterly taxes and how to do that. And then setting up personal finances for you, and then how to invest using tax smart accounts, okay? When you join Money Bootcamp, you get half price one-on-one consults with me for a full year. That is a huge benefit of being in Money Bootcamp. And I'm just offering this just today. If you decide you want to join in the next 4 days, and Mark is giving you the link there, you have to actually join using that /register link. If you go to that and register for a class, it will tag you in my system to give you a bonus. And the bonus is 1 free consult with me, a one-on-one consult to kind of go over your situation right now with me alone to just like calibrate where you're at with your money and get you a plan. Okay. So if you want to do that, just click that link. to the register, it will actually be signing you up for a free class. You don't have to watch it. As long as you like watch it for a minute or two, you'll be registered in my system to get the bonus. Once you buy Money Bootcamp, it will automatically send you that bonus call. Okay, awesome. So yeah, and a lot of people in the chat here are actually in Money Bootcamp, and if you want to message them, I suppose you can. Awesome. Lee says Money Bootcamp is the best investment I made. I'm so happy about that. Okay, so I don't want to take up too much of your time talking about Money Bootcamp, but it is a program that is basically designed for this purpose, right? I've given you sort of a bite-sized chunk of it today in this hour, but Money Bootcamp is really set up to put those systems into place where it's happening for you. Okay, so what you can do is you can go to Money Bootcamp sales, sunlighttax.com/Money Bootcamp sales is directly to the sales page if you know you want it and you want to buy. But also you can go to this link, go.sunlighttax.com/register, register for that free class. And if you just watch it for a minute, it will tag you in my system to automatically give you a free one-on-one call with me. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this screen up over here. I'm embarrassed I went over time and I made such a big deal about not. So I understand you may need to go. Feel free to go if you need to. I am so pleased to just help you understand a little bit like the scenario, what's happening in a recession, some personal finance basics that you can take care of, kind of things that can mitigate your risk, some opportunities for you. So I hope that this has been a really helpful class. Please let me know. Let me know in the chat if it's been helpful for you. I'm really, really happy to know. And if there's ways you think I could improve in the future, that's awesome. I do want to just share with you, I'm over time and I will share this recording afterwards. So if you want to watch the recording later tonight when I send out an email with it, I will just spend the next couple of minutes just telling you what I am doing right now in my own investments, because I know that this is something I've started to be a little bit more public about, what I'm doing behind the scenes with my own money. Awesome. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. And if you have any bootcamp specific questions about joining, Mark is in the chat and he can help you so I can stay on task. Okay, so a year ago, when I first offered this class, I offered it because at that time, inflation was at a record high. And the markets had just had a big drop and it was very gut wrenching. And I was looking at my own portfolio, which lost value as everybody's did. And I was like, ugh, but I know my own wisdom, right? Don't sell because of your feelings. It's actually a good time to buy. So at that time, I met with my own accountant, and yes, I have an accountant. Isn't that funny? But I made that decision about opportunity costs, that it's worth it for me to pay somebody else to do that so that I can focus on my business more. But I have these really like deep dive meetings with them, and we talk about my cash, how much cash reserves I need. So at that time, I did an analysis of the cash I needed to have on hand for the next year, made sure that I set that aside. So I had it. And once I knew that amount, of course, it's a guess. We don't know the future, right? But I had a pretty good sense. Then I took an owner's draw out of, cash I had available. I took an owner's draw and I bought $20,000 of index funds. I invested in the stock market, and I don't try to time the market, nor would I recommend that you do. But looking back at the historic data, I timed it pretty fucking well because the market had just crashed. And what usually happens is people then like to buy at the lowest point they can, buy in a crash, called buying the dip, and the value recovered. So even though the bulk of my investments dropped in value, I made one big investment on top of it at the sale price. So those investments out of my whole portfolio did especially well. So I feel really good about that. I love this idea of buying when the market crashes. So I did that a year ago. This month, so now it's almost a year later, what have I been doing now in May 2023? again, I did this cash analysis. So at the end of my, busy season, my busy season is tax season. I did an analysis of my cash available in my business. What do I need to get myself through my very slow summer period? And you're probably similar. Many businesses slow down in the summer. So in that, I did another cash analysis. How much money do I need on hand? I made sure to set that aside. And then I did an owner's draw of the rest of it. Now, the debt ceiling thing is real. It is happening right now. And I have a little bit of a fear that there might be a big old market drop if the Republican Party, tries to, hold the economy hostage, basically, over not raising the debt ceiling limit. And so I'm actually planning to wait until we get a resolution on the debt ceiling before I take this money that's now in cash and put it into the actual stock market. Okay. That personally, because I know that this will happen around June 1st, give or take, it's worth it to me to wait a month to not see my portfolio, drop 10% in one day. So that's, that's what I'm doing right now. I am also taking this opportunity to educate myself about a new investment area that I have not really delved into before, which is real estate. So I've been reading beginning books on real estate. I actually met with a real estate agent this week and I looked at properties. So I'm actually considering strongly investing in real estate at this point too. And part of that is portfolio diversification. And part of it is just looking at an economic period where, there's some uncertainty and thinking about real estate. I will not make a move until I have really educated myself on every aspect. You will not find me teaching anything about real estate until I feel backwards and forwards absolutely confident in all the risks. I will show you that I'm in learning mode right now, which I am, but that's what I'm doing. So I hope that has been helpful for all of you. It's really exciting to me to just be able to be with you in a moment where you might be feeling uncertain. And I want to reassure you that, recessions are normal. They happen. And I'm now 44. I've now been through a couple as an adult. I've seen my portfolio go dramatically down and then recover. And if you're in your 20s or your 30s, and this is your first recession, the first time you've ever watched the stocks in your portfolio drop, it's scary. It doesn't feel good. It's gut wrenching. And a lot of people with those feelings sell stuff and guarantee their loss. But I'm just here to say, my meta message today is it's okay. Your feelings are normal, honor them, but don't be ruled by them, right? Remember the data, look back, remember to stay calm, and you don't need to do anything rash. Rash decisions are how you lose money. Education is how you do not. All right. So I'm so honored to be here with you. As advertised, there were no questions in today's class. I'm not sure I made that clear enough to Mark. I apologize if some of you didn't realize, but I'm not going to take any questions. I'm just going to end because I promised a short class today, and I want to make sure the recording stays nice and short too. You will all get the recording. We will be sending it out later this afternoon. I'm absolutely honored to be here with all of you today. Thank you for coming. And I really hope that this has been helpful for you. Feel free to send me an email and let me know if you learned something, if you felt like it was reassuring. I would love to know how you felt. All right. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I really appreciate all of you. And don't forget, if you do decide that you want to join Money Bootcamp, feel free to send us an email if you have questions. That is absolutely fine about joining Money Bootcamp. We will make sure that everybody who buys between now and noon on Monday gets that bonus sent to them of a free consultation call with me. So that's just a little incentive right now. If you decide you want to join Money Bootcamp, but you decide that it is time for you to know this stuff, I am super happy to give you this little bonus. And I love talking to people. It's my favorite part of my work. All right. Sending you love, all the love, sending you calm. Remember, the news is a little bit triggering and you have to have a real grain of salt. I hope I am here to be that filter for you and to remind you that everything is not a disaster. It's not all going to hell. The government is doing a competent and excellent job right now. The Fed is something to be proud of. So I hope you feel good. All right. Take care, everybody. All right. Bye.